This video is brought to you by Squarespace.
I've just typed in 58,008. Turn it upside down. Boobs.
Ricky might be the most unlikely superstar on Earth. He's a slightly overweight, average-looking Brit from a working-class background who somehow rose to become one of the most influential voices of our time.
It's the last time.
Ricky Gervais! Rising to the top of Hollywood before they eventually lost control of him.
If you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and fuck off.
Today, we will explore the story of Ricky Gervais.
And one day you'll meet someone and life will be brilliant. So, nothing to feel sad about. Not yet. I think my mum liked me doing science, and in fact, when I changed, I went home for Christmas, and bless her, she'd bought me a big biology book. And I went, oh, thanks. I said, I've swapped to philosophy. And she went, what's that? And I said, it doesn't matter. I said, I'm going to be a pop star anyway. And she went, pop star is another word for junkie.
His parents, by all accounts, were good people. They clearly loved him and treated him well, but it doesn't seem as though they really believed in his ambitions.
I got into University College London, my first choice. I got all the grades I needed, and I went to do biology, and I suddenly thought, this isn't why I came to university. I came to university to join a band.
Believe it or not, that was Ricky Gervais and his 80s pop group, Shauna Dancing. What?
What?
That's you?
What is Shauna Dancing?
My pop group I was in, that failed miserably. Thanks very much for bringing that up.
Somewhere in his early 20s, Ricky and his friend created a band called Shauna Dancing. Basically, it was an opportunity for Ricky to LARP as if he was David Bowie. Very quickly, they landed a record deal. I think it's important just to take a minute here and bear in mind Ricky's upbringing.
A working class teenager in a council house in a rough estate in Reading. Honestly, I grew up where it was last man standing. I used to have my mum cut my hair over a week because I couldn't go to school. So I went, haircut, fuck it, I'm not giving them that.
So they had two songs. One was called More to Lose and one called Bitter Heart. The first one charting at 117. The second, a phenomenal success, charting at number 79. The record label saw this as a bit of a flop.
Now it's over.
I started a band and we got signed and it was over as quick as it started. My rock career was 1 year long.
It did lead him to go on to manage a band called Suede.
Oh, I did help out this band a little bit in the early years. When I told them I couldn't manage them anymore, there was no tears. They didn't beg, and that's when their career really took off.
Ricky's life really wasn't looking very spectacular. He spent a period of his time on government assistance on benefits, and eventually in his late 20s he realised he needed to get a normal job, in which he worked every single day, sat in a boring office. Before we go any further, I want to give a massive shout out to your boys at Squarespace for sponsoring. Squarespace is the #1 platform for building and developing your own beautiful looking website. Designing a website can be pretty tricky. You've got to twiddle buttons and click stuff and no code. But Squarespace makes it super simple. With their easy to use platform, anyone can make an amazing website. Whatever it is you do, whether you're a graphic designer, fitness coach, with tons of templates to choose from, you can pick and customize any of them to fit exactly what it is you do. As well, there are tons of built-in tools like email marketing, e-commerce, appointment scheduling that will elevate what it is you do and bring it to that next level. I've personally been using Squarespace lately for my brand Viral Beast, where we make thumbnails for different YouTubers, and I must say I really am proud with the results, and I have to thank Squarespace for that. So be sure to check out squarespace.com/Jimmy the Giant, and to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain, use the code Jimmy the Giant. Anyway, back to the video.
I had a feeling this news station, I think that the slogan was London's only alternative or something like that. The only problem was I didn't know what I was doing.
On XFM 104.9. It's 4:10 after the break, Oasis.
He got this job behind the scenes at this radio station, and he immediately rightly realised he didn't know what he was doing. And so I sent a tape, and it must have landed on the top of Ricky's pile of different stuff on his desk.
His was a CV at first.
Top of the pile?
Definitely, yeah. And I went, yeah, that'll do.
Because he certainly wouldn't have looked, beyond, what, the 5th or 6th letter from the top.
And I remember my first thought was, fuck me.
He's tall.
The first run of The Ricky Gervais Show was really the first of its kind for anything like this for Ricky. He wasn't a comedian, he was just a man in his late 30s, but yet this show was gold.
Superwoman! Are you sure they're called REM? Or have they changed that? They call it Superwoman, you tosser!
The biggest single influence on my creative process. Yeah? Who cares?
I think you said your brother was the funniest person you'd ever
Growing
heard.
up, the first person you answered back to was your parents, and he answered back. He got sent to bed.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking, no, he was right.
Yeah.
And I thought, they lost the argument. There was a big news story last year, right? It was about a terrible train crash. Now, the train crash had happened about a year before.
Comedy was never Ricky's first creative love. However, comedy had always played a vital role in his life.
If someone goes to the loo and they come back and they've got a patch of wee on their trousers, right? And everyone knows, and then someone says, you've got a patch of wee, and they go red, I go, fuck, get me out of here. Yeah. Whereas if I come out, I go, fucking piss myself again. It's done. Yeah. It was survival. You laugh at everything. It gets you over it, and a sense of humour. Yeah, it makes you bulletproof.
Yeah.
You don't have to pave the jungle. Yeah. You can just grow a pair and have a laugh about it.
But Ricky's comedy is far more than just rude jokes and being like a shock jock. His comedy always was very pinned on like human observation.
I became an atheist, but not through studying theology, through body language. When I was about 8 years old, I loved Jesus. I thought it was brilliant. And my brother, who was 11 years older than me, and he came in and he looked and he said, why do you believe in God then? And my mum went, Bob. And I knew, she doesn't want him to say something. And I thought, why is that? Yes, of course. It's just like Santa.
And so at XFM, things were looking very good for Ricky. And then, seemingly like all opportunities in Ricky's life, XFM got taken over by Capital Radio, and they immediately cancelled the Ricky Gervais Show.
We would, just joke and riff about observations of office life. I realised Ricky was going to get me fired, so I jumped ship, joined the BBC, and while I was there, I had the opportunity to make a little training video, and I called Ricky and I said, let's do the office stuff we did. And we made this little tape, and it just came alive. Ricky's performance was electric.
Sammy, David, you old slag.
CD Boss was a pre-pilot that was made in 1998. In this, Ricky played a character called David Brent, who had this interesting personality, who saw themselves as this charismatic person everyone loved, but whose clear desperation for approval was very evident to everyone but him.
The observations felt fresh and kind of authentic, and it just began to snowball from there. The BBC did a test screening of the first episode of The Office. What's up? Hey, what's up? I love that. We shot it documentary style because it seemed like just the quickest way to shoot. We didn't have to do lots of clever lighting. We could kind of move fast. Right.
I was emulating those sort of quaint docusoaps of the 90s that I'd watched, and ordinary people get their 15 minutes of fame, and that was it exactly.
Do come on. Do you want to take a seat and come back in half an hour? Yeah, sorry.
I believe we've got seats already reserved.
The format did exist before The Office, films like Spinal Tap. However, The Office would turn this format into one of the backbones of comedies.
Literally the greatest idea I have ever heard in my life. That idea is terrible.
You're gay. No, I'm not gay.
Hello, mate. Shabadi G, manager of Corrupt FM. Corrupt
FM, you know who you are. Stop me showing off in front of the camera.
Members of the public rank every show from 0 to 100 on what they think of it. And you get these figures for every single programme. The first few weeks of The Office were just terrible.
And it scored the lowest audience score ever. The only thing that was lower was women's lawn bowls.
Chance to put forward or rest on those bowls would be a good result too. Well, like
Ricky and Steve announced, slightly unexpectedly, that they wanted to direct. People didn't usually say that.
But what Ricky had was, because he was older, because he wasn't trying to be a performer and be a star, he was sort of invincible. Because if the BBC said, well, we're not going to let you write it and direct it and be in it, he'd be like, all right, see ya.
And so because he wasn't desperate for fame, he only really ever wanted to do the things that he wanted to do.
I knew I wanted to own my own labour and create the work. I wanted to be the writer-director. That was my biggest lesson. Have you got a tissue? Sorry. Have you got a tissue? What's that?
That's not mine. It's the first one I picked up.
Your mum's.
Yeah, mine are twice as big as that.
Whilst The Office was being made, the pilot had started to get around to different TV networks. And it led to Channel 4 working with Ricky Gervais on a number of projects. The 11 o'clock show, Meet Ricky Gervais. It was clear, Ricky was very funny. He was very entertaining. But it wouldn't quite be that would make him the Ricky Gervais everyone knows and loves today. It would be something else.
I will try twice hard. I really will. I know I've been complacent, and I'll turn this place around if we just say that it's not definite now. And then we can...
This one scene showed a potential in Ricky Gervais that was very unique. Like, sure, he had the ability to make you laugh, but he also had the ability to make you feel.
Every time I've cried, Invention of Lying, David Brent, Derek, Afterlife, every time I've cried, it's the first take, because then you feel better.
Yeah.
And I think comedy can be about empathy. Comedy is often laughing at the wrong thing because you know what the right thing is. Well, the funniest person you know isn't a professional comedian.
Yeah.
It's your dad or your granddad or your uncle, because someone has to walk in the pub and you see your uncle do a second and you're laughing because you know what he's thinking.
Yeah.
And it's about empathy because you go, I know why you're laughing. You're laughing at his wig or something.
There was something about seeing this character that beforehand you sort of despised and laughed at, crying to get their job back. It was really heartbreaking.
If we're starting from now.
I think a lot of comedians, like people who had done comedy for a long time, they would almost be fearful of trying to do a scene like this. Yeah, it might come off as cringy or maybe trying to step too far out of their wheelhouse. But Ricky didn't have any pre-existing pressure on him.
And the Golden Globe goes to The Office.
At the age of 40, Ricky Gervais was an overnight success.
I meant more in the traditional way, like maybe in the early days, what if that happened?
Well, I didn't do the early days. Right. My first gig was Animals, and the first gig I did of Animals, the warm-up, I was on the front cover of the Radio Times as the most influential person in comedy, which is obviously ludicrous. The first book of Moses, commonly called Genesis. Start at the beginning. Fairly big book, but... When I'd won the BAFTAs and I was at the front cover of Radio Times, there's a part of me that think I should do stand-up.
Yeah.
I sort of got to prove my point here a little bit. Do you remember the Strangeways riots about 10 years ago? And the prisoners were up on the roof for about 3 days, and the guards and police couldn't do anything. They were ripping the place to pieces. They were putting the tiles off, and they were just throwing it down for about 3 days. She went, look at them. They should be locked up.
What about something like the Newsnight Review, because that's quite intellectual? What did they make of it? Huh? The Newsnight Review, what did they make of it? Ian Hislop, didn't he review it? Didn't he give it a review on TV? Did he like it? What did he make of it? He didn't like it?
A lot of the material is just so banal. After having produced a programme as funny as The Office, I cannot see why he's on stage.
You do it for yourself. That way, at least you come up with something interesting and different. I mean, if you start second-guessing people, you'll end up pleasing no one.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
This quest to be popular, it's never a good thing in art. It's never a good thing. If it happens, great, right? But if you aim at it, you'll come unstuck.
And from here, Ricky's career just kept growing. His original XFM radio show came back as The Ricky Gervais Show, which became the most popular podcast of all time in 2005. The show led to him meeting Carl Pilkington. Him, Ricky, and Steve Merchant created a series called An Idiot Abroad. He wrote a successful kids book called Flanimals. The Office obviously sold to an American company and created The American Office, which became the most popular sitcom in television history.
I'm sorry, the Emmy goes to The Office.
And so by the 2010s, Ricky was now filthy rich, had created some absolutely iconic pieces of television, an incredibly successful stand-up career. And throughout Ricky's projects, we could really see his range of not only being hysterically funny, but also very insightful and incredibly deep. But you see, with all this success, and as Ricky grew in Hollywood, Ricky would start to take another role in society.
Twitter is like being able to read every toilet wall in the world. Ordinary people were getting sick of multi-millionaires telling them to recycle when everyone knew they were flying around in private jets and limos. And
as social attitudes in the last 10 or so years have kind of taken on this sort of revisionist attitude of the past.
One of the great things about The Office, by the way, a whole new generation of fans are getting into it now. We were just talking about your kids a moment ago. At what point do you introduce them to the series? Still a little young, right?
I
kind of think maybe never. That show is so inappropriate now. I mean,
and so there'd be this kind of cultural rift, a split between these very progressive woke people who, you know, like Hollywood, would look at The Office as just rude, offensive, terrible, and then everyone else who would look at The Office as fun, very heartwarming, and a show that could deal in taboos in a very sensitive way. And so this split in opinion led us to the Golden Globes.
Hello and welcome to the 77th Annual Golden Globe Awards.
Where would we be without Ricky Gervais? Did you see his opening monologue?
Put on the internet about him saying, don't virtue signal, just come out here and get your little prize, go fuck off, because nobody cares about your opinion. I was like, thank you.
Thank God for Ricky Gervais going off Sunday night to let people know that you still got a voice.
Up until this point, he'd done Golden Globes, he's hosted it a few times, always teasing and mocking celebrities, but this one felt unlike the rest.
Apple roared into the TV game with a morning show, a superb drama, a superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing, made by a company that runs sweatshops in China.
This speech resonated with so many people, and it gained Ricky a new level of prestige. He was the man who could insult the king to his face.
It's always lovely to get nominated and awarded, but if you take it too seriously, you're on a slippery slope. If you really think that you're anything special when you win an award, you just won an award, that's all.
And it's because he's always been so adamant in his own way of doing things. Him being adamant on writing and directing led him to creating his own production companies. So now he's not beholden to anyone to get a TV show made, he can do it himself.
I love awkward.
Excruciatingly awkward.
Yeah. But not in real life when it's not me. If I'm at a social occasion and everyone's laughing and someone makes a crap joke and no one laughs, I want to go back in time and save them. I want to go, or I to try and just look at me, don't look at them. I can't stand someone else being embarrassed. You should never punch down. You should punch up. Well, who's to say what's up and down is?
Yeah.
People get offended when they mistake the subject of a joke with the actual target, and they're not necessarily the same. We're all idiots, and what my job is to let people know it doesn't matter. We're all fucking idiots, and that's great. There's nothing more joyous than not being able to stop laughing.
I really don't think Ricky makes these types of jokes to hurt people. He makes them to explore topics and to make you think, to make you feel, and most importantly, to make you laugh.
People say, how does he get away with it? Well, because I fucking think about it. I haven't gone out there drunk and said something horrendous. I've thought about that joke more than your article about it. Yeah. Appreciation for the audience and worrying about what they think of your stuff. Two different things.
Right.
To lead the orchestra, you've got to turn your back on the audience. I, from somewhere, had this strange, unjustified belief that it would be all right. I always thought it'd be all right. I always knew I'd do what I wanted to do, and I always have.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to join us on the Afters podcast where we'll talk about this and much more. Peace.